Looking back on my life, I now know that I have had heart problems from an early age. I was born in 1957, and it's fascinating to see how much modern medicine has improved and the technology that is now available that wasn't during different stages of my life. Heart problems run in both sides of my family. I do not remember exactly how old I was when my heart started to give me problems, but I do remember as a child of 5, playing with my friends outside and feeling my heart jumping. I know now that it was misfiring and skipping beats. As a child, I could only describe it as 2 raccoons fighting under my shirt. I can't say that it really hurt, it was more frustrating than anything. Fast forward to 2010. I was in a business meeting with a friend when I felt a pain in my chest. 911 was called, and after several tests were done, I was diagnosed with myocarditis. They basically thought a virus had attacked my heart and weakened it. My heart ejection fraction was 39%. The perfect health for my age was between 60 to 70%. Unbeknownst to me at the time, this is what would lead to my experience. I was very upset as I worked hard at the time to stay in extremely good shape. My business was physically demanding, and I loved physical activities and hobbies in my free time. God healed my heart. Sometime after I was diagnosed with myocarditis, and several medication changes later, I had difficulties due to me being allergic to ACE inhibitors prescribed to me to treat my heart. I was at home sitting on the side of my bed. I prayed, "God, if you are going to heal me, please heal me now. If I am supposed to testify, then I will. Whatever your will is, I accept it." Suddenly, out of nowhere, I felt a warmth and a tingling on the top of my head. It felt like the palm of a hand coming down and laying across the top of my head. This sensation spread down my head to my cheeks, to my neck, down my arms to my fingers. It continued to return up my arms and down both sides of my body. I felt the warmth spread down my legs to my toes, and it returned up my body in the same manner. Then it felt like the hand was lifted off my head. To this day, I don't know how to explain it, but I just knew in that moment that I was healed. A few days later, we went to my doctor. He ordered the standard echo and heart cath tests again. The doctor was amazed as he told me that he wished he had something to do with the results, but that he didn't. He proceeded to explain that my heart was back to normal size and is stronger. I was taken off the medications and returned to a normal life, or so I thought. A year later, I got sick again. I wasn't upset, like I was the first time. I realized that when I prayed, I wasn't specific enough. God answered what I asked. I should have for the healing to be complete, and to never let it happen again. Either way, the miracle was still experienced, and I will always proclaim God's greatness, and the many ways that He has and does continue to bless me and answer prayers. For the next 10 years, I was able to maintain a normal lifestyle with medication while having only 25% ejection fraction. 2019. Rapidly declining health. My doctors constantly brought up discussions of me receiving a pacemaker. I always walked myself around that topic, but by September of 2019, I was feeling the worst I have ever felt. So I had the doctors schedule the necessary tests for September 12, 2019 to get started on the road to getting a pacemaker implanted. But I didn't make it that far. September 13, 2019, my wife Kim and my cousin Alice convinced me to let 911 take me to the emergency room. The top of my head, which was mostly bald so you could see my exposed scalp, was purple and I was utterly exhausted. Dozens of tests were done over the span of 4 days at the St. Vincent Emergency Room in Evansville, Indiana. My oxygen had dropped to 57, which was unheard of, and I kept blacking out. Waking up after each episode, gasping for air like a fish out of water. The hospital was going to discharge me. Basically, they didn't know what was wrong with me and wanted to send me home. My wife and cousin pitched a fit, and I was life-flighted to Indianapolis. After an on-call cardiologist took a second look at my chart and agreed more testing needed to be done. A day later and multiple failed test attempts later, I was placed in a medically induced coma because I had entered heart failure. Plans have changed drastically, and by the time I woke up 2 days later, I was given two options: receive an left ventricular assist device implant to bridge me until I could receive a heart transplant, or die. I now have what is known as an LVAD device and feel better than I have since I could remember. But during those 2 days in a coma, I had what I now know is a near-death experience. My trip to heaven, thoughts, feelings, and experiences during coma. I was tired of fighting for every breath. I was on life support with machines breathing for me. A balloon was implanted into my heart to squeeze it, drain fluid, and help maintain it. I felt like I was laying in limbo, just existing, and felt so alone. I was too weak to fight. My soul was weary. I remember the feeling as my soul lifted out of my body. I felt my chest heave as if my body was trying to prevent my soul from escaping. I could feel the inner turmoil as my weakened body struggled to keep my soul in its place. When my body could no longer hold on, I felt my soul snap out of its earthly shell, and my body dropped back down lifelessly. The freedom I felt when I left my body was like being confined to a small room and then being set free. Suddenly, I was on the ceiling looking down at myself. Kim and Alice were by my body. Machines kept my lungs breathing, and a pump worked my heart as the nurses moved around frantically. I looked to my left and saw a glimmer of light coming through the ceiling. It was like a beacon or voice calling me, yet it was emitting no audible sound. I found myself floating, drawn toward this light. As I drew closer, the light grew larger until I was totally immersed in it. The shimmering light was like millions of little particles all around me. Each particle flickered like millions of microscopic lightning bugs. There were so many that the light never faltered, but grew brighter and larger with each passing moment. It was like nothing I had ever seen, so beautiful and inviting. I felt a warmth that embraced my entire being, and I felt love like I have never felt before. It was like I was being hugged by agape love. I had never felt so loved and so wanted in my life, which was saying something because I was raised by two of the most wonderful, doting parents that always put me first before anything else. This was stronger than even that. Suddenly, I was no longer floating, but stood upright on my feet. I don't know where I was, but I felt like I was home. It was a feeling of complete belonging, of being a part of something greater than myself. Not just emotionally, but spiritually and physically. It was like that thing we are all searching for had found me, was now a part of me, and I felt complete. Then my head started pounding. The sound or noise was so horrific, like millions of people talking all at the same time. I could hardly stand it. It was so overwhelming. I put my hands to my ears to stop the noise, but it did nothing. The sounds were being absorbed through my skull and into my brain. The pressure was so intense that I felt like my mind was going to explode. Then, as quickly as it started, the pressure was gone. The noise that was so deafening just a moment before now sounded like the wind whistling through the trees. I now realize it was the sound of billions of worshippers praising God. Billions of voices singing and praising at the same time. I was so astounded that I fell to my knees and shouted, "Glory be to God!" After a few moments, I returned to my feet and was elevated high above a crowd and a massive city. It was as if I was standing on a substance that was solid in form yet liquid in feel. As I looked around my perch, it seemed to be changing colors constantly. A warm and tingly feeling ran through my entire body, head to toe, as if it was energizing me. This was the exact feeling I had when the Lord healed me of my first episode of myocarditis. I was wearing a robe, not of cloth but of something that glowed. I noticed I was barefoot and seemed to absorb the energy coming from the light that was under my feet. The light seemed to be everywhere. I felt more energized and connected than I have ever felt with anything or anyone in my life. I felt a breeze blowing on my face, but it was not like the wind here on earth. It was more like pure energy passing through my body. I could feel my bangs move across my forehead, which was unusual because I have been bald most of my adult life. I caught a whiff of something that reminded me of honeysuckle in the spring. It was like the sweet morning dew covered completely. It was so sweet that you could taste its fragrant aroma. The City of Heaven. There is nothing on this earth that could explain, and no words exist that could describe the beauty and the majesty of what I experienced while in heaven. Looking down from my elevated position, I could see what seemed to be a walled city, and I heard a voice say, "Stephen, take note of all you see and hear." This was no normal city. The walls went on for miles and miles, both upward and outward. They were more massive than one could imagine, infinitely larger than anything on earth. The height of the walls was greater than any human could ever build. I was suspended miles above the city, so I could see all four of its breathtaking walls at the same time. While I was still elevated above the city, I looked outside the awe-inspiring walls and saw miles and miles of fields littered with what I can only describe as flowers. They were much more beautiful than the flowers we have here on earth. People and animals alike were strolling together and enjoying the beauty of it all. I heard the voice again, "Stephen, take note of all you see and hear." As I returned to my feet, the gate I was standing by started to open. As it opened, there was a crowd gathering outside the walled city in front of the gate, about 15 feet from where I stood. Everyone seemed to be in their mid-30s to early 40s, and everyone looked healthy, beautiful, and happy. Again, I hear the voice, "Stephen, take note of all you see and hear." I did not see any lines of people or souls waiting to get in. You are just there, and you are known by all the very second you arrive. The first to approach me was my father and mother. They did not float or walk in. But one moment they were just there. My dad smiled and showed me his hands wiggling all his fingers. This was significant because he lost his index finger at the age of 6. After my parents' arrival, one by one, more people came into view. I saw my grandparents and many of my aunts and uncles. I'm going to start summarizing a few things now. I saw an uncle that had committed suicide there, an uncle that struggled with addiction, an uncle who was into some pretty serious criminal activity. I saw someone who I knew on earth that was gay. I saw a relative who was a known con artist. I saw people I knew and didn't know that had messages to send back to people I knew here on earth. Those messages never made sense to me, but the people who received them, they meant everything. I saw my best friend who was murdered in 2018, healthy, happy, and reunited with the love of his life who passed before him, leaving him distraught and broken until he was called back home to heaven. I saw so many different kinds of people that I both knew and didn't know from life on earth. I felt as though I met 3 different groups of people. 1. Those that I knew and recognized like my parents. 2. Those whom I had never met or even known about. And 3. Those that could send a message or prove God's grace forgives all sins. We were all linked, all connected on a spiritual level. I became one with the body of Christ. It was amazing. I never wanted to leave this place. The hugs felt electric, sort of like static electricity. It filled me with joy, warmth, and love. I was never allowed in the city walls during this experience. I attributed it later to the fact that I was not going to stay. I heard a voice say, "Stephen, you must go back. I have work for you to do." Time in hell. I felt as if I was falling backwards. I was light as air, as if I had no weight to my body at all. The light and the warmth of the city became so distant that I could not see or feel it anymore. I found myself in total darkness. Everything became black, a black that is more than just a color. This was a black that was void of all life, existence, and was bone-chillingly cold. I felt totally alone. When I stopped falling, it felt as if I was at a crossroads. Then I heard that voice again, "Stephen, take note of all that you see and hear." I felt as if I was being pulled in a different direction. I found myself laying on my back, floating in air about 3 feet off the floor with nothing to support me or hold me up. Just suspended there, motionless. I looked down toward my feet, and I was wearing my hospital clothing again, but I knew I was not in the hospital. The place I was in had little to no light, and the light it did have was not constant or powerful like before. Instead, it was cold and flickered like a burning fireplace in a dark room. I could not see a door or window anywhere in the room. In fact, there was no entrance of any kind. The walls just seemed solid all around me, and the room seemed to be oval. Not completely round, but longer than wide in symmetry, like an oval-shaped dome. Lying there on my back, I felt as though some invisible force was holding me in place. I could not sit up or move my body. All I could move was my head and neck, which enabled me to look around. As my mind adapted to my new surroundings, the room appeared to be some sort of cave, but unlike any cave I have ever seen before. The walls of the cave appeared to be hard, black, and cold. They looked as if someone had meticulously carved peaks and valleys in a convoluted pattern many millennia ago. The peaks and valleys had long since been worn, almost smooth, and now looked like polished onyx. Looking around the room, the wall that was at my feet had a strange writing on it unlike anything I had ever seen. Not only in the unrecognizable language it was being written, but also in the way it was moving. The writing was being etched into the stone wall starting at the top of the 15-foot wall, and the text appeared to be moving and changing continually. As each line of text was completed from right to left, it slid downwards to make room for another line of text. And as lines moved downward, it filled the wall from top to bottom before the text slowly disappeared into the floor. It was like a line of eerie movie credits in a foreign language that rolled in reverse. The unfamiliar letters were written out slowly and meticulously as by an unseen hand from right to left. The crimson blood-colored letters would spark like hot iron forged in a fire sizzling on the cold wall in an almost liquid form and hardened as it scrolled down to the floor. I could not understand how it was being etched into the stone wall. At this point, I wasn't sure where I was, but I was sure I was not in heaven anymore. I was overcome with a feeling of fear and the need to flee the cold and eerie room, but there were no windows or doors for an escape. I was immobilized, laying on a table that did not exist, still hovering in the air, being held down in a room with no way to enter or exit. You would think that the room would have dirt like a cave, but it was immaculately clean. Not a speck of dirt was to be found. Even the embers of the writing left no ash as it continued to build the list at a steady pace. Encounter with Satan. Out of what seemed like nowhere, a man suddenly appeared in the room and walked up to me. His appearance was outstanding, and he didn't look like he belonged there. He was the most handsome, immaculately well-dressed person I had ever seen, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. Something about him drew me in. His dark black hair was flawless and well-groomed, slicked back with no part and not a hair out of place. He was clean-shaven, and his bronzed complexion was perfectly complemented by his dark eyes. Without making this summary too long for someone to just glance through what they want to read, I am going to end the details of hell here at this point. And the reason is that I have a really hard time rehashing the torture, torment, and evilness that I experienced while there. The sadness was unlike any I had ever felt before. The fear had a taste, an aftertaste that still comes back to haunt me to this day. The things that Satan had said, the things he did, the way he so brazenly demonstrated what he knew as power, was enough to make anyone suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So please forgive me. I have written it all down once before, and the coldness that is left to resonate inside my body each time I reread, rehash, or retype these experiences in hell is a coldness that takes more than a warm blanket and hot soup to kill. I saw different levels in both places, both heaven and hell. I saw people in both places. The feelings I felt in both places were so different and so very real. But there was one message: we have a choice. Which highlights not only my experience and life leading up to my experience, but also gives a little detail about the NDE that my father had experienced as well. There are several memories and moments that I highlight in my book to show miracles and blessings in action. Roots, I guess you could call them, that feed into a bigger picture to help you see the whole. Heaven exists, as does hell. I'm doing much better today with the LVAD and feel better than I have in years. The way things have changed since my return home has been amazing. No matter what you are going through in life, or how bad things seem to get, if you believe in Jesus and leave it in His hands, things will get better. These are my personal beliefs, and this story is what I personally experienced during a 2-day medically induced coma on September 18, 2019. I was told that time here is short and that I should exhaust all avenues to get my experience and His message out. What can I say? When God gives you a job and a second chance at life, you do it. Life after this experience. Since my return, I felt a tangible connection with the divine, as if God were speaking directly to me. My goal is now clear: to share this experience as a reminder of the importance of faith, love, and the choice to follow the light. Despite the trials, I live today with renewed gratitude and the certainty that our earthly existence is just a step towards something much greater.